Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, im Namen der Volkswirtschaftlichen Gesellschaft Oberösterreich und im Namen der Sparte Industrie der Wirtschaftskammer Oberösterreich darf ich Sie heute sehr herzlich zum Digi Think Tank zum Thema Future Skills willkommen heißen. Ich freue mich ganz besonders, dass wir heute einen außergewöhnlichen Speaker bei uns begrüßen dürfen. Ich freue mich, dass er bei uns ist und er wird heute seine Keynote Speech auf Englisch halten. Perttu Pölönen ist uns heute aus Finnland zugeschaltet. Herzlich willkommen bei uns und herzlich willkommen auch aus Linz. Ich freue mich aus diesem Grund ganz besonders, weil er nämlich ein Top-Speaker zum einen ist, zum anderen natürlich auch ein Vordenker, der uns heute viel über die Zukunft der Betriebe, der Arbeit, der Future Skills in unserer Welt verraten wird. Und genau darauf freuen wir uns aber allen voran, freue ich mich jetzt, dass sie auch bei uns ist, Kommerzialrätin Magistra Angelika Serre-Froscher, die Vizepräsidentin der Wirtschaftskammer Oberösterreich und Präsidentin der Volkswirtschaftlichen Gesellschaft Oberösterreich. Herzlich willkommen. Ich ersuche um ein paar kurze Begrüßungsworte. Und sie wird das in Englisch machen, damit auch Herr Pölönen natürlich diese Begrüßungsworte mit uns teilen kann, obwohl ich schon verraten bekommen habe, dass er auch ganz gut Deutsch spricht.
Thank you so much, Christoph Bauer. Yeah, dear Digi Think Tank guests, a very warm welcome to our exciting webinar today concerning the current topic of future skills. The Volkswirtschaftliche Gesellschaft, as it mentioned before, is an initiative of our Chamber of Commerce in Upper Austria. And this Digi Think Tank today is a common initiative with the Upper Austrian industry and the whole Volkswirtschaftliche Gesellschaft of the whole Austria. And to give you our main purpose, it is to bring current discussions to the responsible people of education and entrepreneurs of the different branches. And so I want to say welcome to you all today behind the screens. And it is one of our most forcing and future building topic. It is the skill shortage. This is a phenomenon, and I know that you know it too, as a result of the demographic situation in the whole Europe, not only in Austria. And our big questions revolve around these aspects: is where can we get the people for the labor market in the future, and how can we motivate this and bring the new skills which we are need in a huge mess for the future in our markets. And for example, concerning our really big challenges on the whole transforming questions of economy transforming, society transforming with the renewable energies and the artificial intelligence topics. Therefore, we need a huge amount of high-skilled workers in the future. So as an advocacy, we have to discuss this and to bring in new ways of thinking on these topics. Dear Perttu Pölönen, we are so happy to have you here as our keynote speaker today. And we are looking forward to your insights. And so I really appreciate it to have you here. I say thank you in advance and give over to our moderator, Christoph Bauer.
Angelika Serre-Froscher, herzlichen Dank. Danke für diese einleitenden Worte. Vielleicht an Sie noch, meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, eine Info. Sie können natürlich auch im Anschluss an die Keynote Speech Fragen stellen, im besten Fall natürlich gleich auf Englisch. Sie können mir diese Fragen per E-Mail oder per Chat jetzt auch schicken und auch während des gesamten Vortrags. Im Anschluss versuchen wir, alle Fragen noch zu beantworten. Nun, Mr. Pölönen, welcome to our online event. I ask you for your lecture.
Thank you very much. Vielen Dank. You know, it's a pleasure to be here talking to you. My name is Perttu. I'm a futurist and author from Finland, and I've studied, you know, future at Singularity University, a think tank at NASA Ames Research Center in Silicon Valley. And I've started a couple of edtech companies. My passion has always been towards, you know, skills, education. My both parents are teachers, and you know, it runs deep in my veins. But today I will talk to you about future skills. It's the title of my book as well. So when I was in Silicon Valley, you know, I was able to get a peek into the future, you know, understand the impact of technologies, how they will change the way we live in the future. And quite many sleepless nights I was wondering, you know, how will it impact us? So how should our education systems respond, and what kinds of response should we see happening in the future? So what are the skills of the future? You know, one time when I was over there, I asked Ray Kurzweil, he's a futurist and chief technology officer at Google, what would you go to study if you were 20 something? And I of course kind of expected him to say something very trendy and hot and, you know, interesting, like nanotechnology or quantum computing or synthetic biology or blockchain or something like this. But he didn't say those things. He actually said that there's no reason to study anything else today anymore than, you know, philosophy or fine arts. Maybe he wanted to provoke me a bit, but his thinking was that we want to study those things that don't go in vain, you know, things that will last forever. And thinking skills and your character, those are the things that will always help you. And if you want to do something, start with that. Then you can specialize, but that's the foundation. And I thought that was kind of a fresh idea, because many people might say, well, everybody should study coding right now because there's a huge need and we need coders. But if you think or look a bit ahead in the future, some decades from now on, you know, machines will write their own code. So it doesn't last forever, the skill or the need. The same way somebody might say, well, Mandarin Chinese, you know, everybody should know Mandarin Chinese because there's so many people who speak the language. But again, we can translate languages, you know, simultaneously to our earpods. So it doesn't help forever. I mean, it's good. Of course, we should study languages, but the focus, the need is different in the future. So with this thinking, what are the skills that will help us always? So what are the things that, you know, we should invest in because it's worth it? So I started to think, what if I was sent back to school? And actually, you can think about that as well. If you were sent back to school, what do you wish they would teach you? So what are the things, what would your curriculum look like? What would be fantastic to have, you know, at school? And I started to play with this thought, and even quite a lot, so that I built a future curriculum. So 12 skills or 12 modules that I wish we could concentrate on more right now, things that we really need to focus on. So I'll show you the curriculum. I'll go through each one of them and kind of explain why I believe this skill will become more important in the future. And I hope you can then ask and, you know, comment and tell me what you think about those things. But I want to give you like this overall look of what are the future skills right now. So let's get going. Here's the future curriculum, and I will start with the first skill, which is communication and storytelling. Just by the way, can somebody give me a check that, you know, you can see the slide and everything is okay?
Sorry, Mr. Pölönen, we don't see your presentation.
Oh,
we just see a white screen. Ah, yes, perfect, perfect.
So you can see it now?
Now we see it.
Okay, perfect. Let's get going. So communication and storytelling. You know, I don't know how much you have studied or used ChatGPT. It's this bot that gives you, you know, answers. It's incredible generative AI. But many people might be wondering, how are we different from algorithms or machines or computers? What can we get from you that we can't get from ChatGPT or Google, for that matter? And one thing that separates us is that we can give meaning to things. We can share stories, or we can give motivations to things. Like, so why are we doing this? What's the deal? You know, let's say I write a poem, and a machine writes a poem as well, and they're equally good, both poems. So we can't tell them apart. They're good quality. They're beautiful. Only I can tell, you know, why I wrote that poem. Machine delivers. They do a lot of stuff and very well, but they can't tell us what was the reason for their poem or what was the motivation for it. I can tell people that I was on a mountaintop, you know, I was looking back to my, let's say, childhood. I was thinking of my childhood, and I can kind of color the experience. I can tell you why this poem exists, right? And when people hear the background story, when they hear why I did the poem, they can get more out of it. So they can relate. You know, I've had a childhood as well. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Oh, I get this, right? And when we kind of connect with each other this way, the poem is actually, it has more value when we know the background story, right? So rather than just doing what we do, you know, being kind of very good at delivering stuff, whether it's a diagnosis or a report or analysis or whatever the end product is. We need to be good at telling why we do that, because that's something that the machines lack. So being able to communicate and tell the story, what's my purpose? Why am I doing this? What's the added value that only I can bring to this process, but a machine can't? So it's a skill of being able to articulate, right? I think that the quality of life is the quality of communication. So equally well as you can, describe what you feel, describe your thinking or your thoughts, that defines what kinds of conversations you're going to have and the relationships you have in your life and all the other things, right? So we really want to focus on it. If every child at school gave a TED Talk presentation through, the whole school path, let's say for 10 years, imagine the resource when these people come to the workforce. They have gotten used to presenting ideas, talking in front of people, inspiring them, articulating their thinking, their thoughts, their dreams. This would be incredibly valuable in the work life if we had really kind of focused on our delivery, communication and storytelling. So it won't go out of fashion. That's quite sure, or we can be quite sure of that in the future as well. Another thing, or the second skill, is passion and character. Again, this is something that the machines lack. Now, if we compare ourselves to a machine, let's say if we work or if we have a job where we can put our kind of humane elements, our humanity kind of into the process, it's easy to replace us. So imagine I'm a cashier. I'm at a shop and my job is just to swipe products and scan them. I'm acting as a human robot. I'm a human battery, kind of, right? So I'm not putting anything from my humane, soft skills to the process. So it's easy to take that human out and put a machine back, right? Or if we take a storage worker, so somebody in the warehouse taking boxes and moving them from one place to another, we don't need a human for that. They can't kind of use their human elements in that. So again, we can take that person out and put a machine or robot to the position. But if we have a person who kind of shows their true colors, let's say a cashier who looks people in the eye, who asks people, how are you doing, who creates an atmosphere in the shop, we don't want to replace that human being, because if we do, we lose something. We can't replace that with a machine. So if you are able to put your passion, your character, your traits, your personality into the job, then you have a competitive advantage against the machine. So we should really cultivate, how can I use my personal kind of strengths in my job, and or how can I find a job where I can be who I really am, how I get to be who I am. So in this way, it's crucially important to know ourselves, like who are we, what jobs would benefit us, or what would be a good fit. So we need to kind of know what kinds of things are important to us. For example, at schools, I wouldn't ask children, what will you become when you are an adult, or what do you want to become when you grow up? Because it's very difficult to find the kind of the words, the titles, because we don't have many of those jobs yet. When I was at school, I was not able to say, I will become a, let's say, mobile app developer. They didn't exist yet. Now there's like tens of millions of them around the world. Or I couldn't say that I will become a virtual reality architect, right? That didn't happen. Now we have those, right? So let's not ask children questions that they can't answer, right? Rather, I would ask them, what clothes would you see yourself in the future? So would you like to work with a one suit, or with a nice jacket or suit, or white jacket like in hospitals, right? Or just like home clothes, like nice and comfy hoovers, and what kinds of clothes would you like to work in? That might be one question to kind of help us see where you might end up, like what kind of work environment might fit you. We could also ask what kind of environment you actually enjoy being in. So, for example, would you like to work in an environment where it's total silence? Nobody interrupts you and you get to focus and concentrate and really lose the track of time. Or would you like to work in a place where there's people all around you all the time, there's chattering, there's noises, you feel more at ease in that environment. So that kind of feels more natural to you. So with these type of questions, we would be able to kind of find where your passion, your character, your personality, where is it kind of leading you to? Because when we get to work on something that actually really drives us, things that we are passionate about, we will be okay. Have you ever tried to win against a person who is passionate? It won't happen. I mean, they will make it. They will make through the uncertainty. They have what it needs. So one of the best services we can do to ourselves or each other is to kind of help us find what we are passionate about, because the rest is history. I would say that every school have two, most important kind of tasks or reasons for existence. One, the schools have, or they should help the students find at least one of their passions, And second, they should strengthen the self-image the students have. Because after that, I wouldn't be afraid or worried about those children. They will be okay, right? They have found one of their passion and they believe in their ability to actually, achieve dreams if they work hard for them. So passion and character central in the future, and it's a skill. I won't think of it as a skill. We can knowingly, purposefully, become better at understanding who we are and then finding appropriate jobs. Third, curiosity and experimentation. Now, when we are at kindergarten, or when at least I was in kindergarten, I was told not to color over the lines, right? When we are drawing some picture, don't color across the lines. And I was thinking a while ago, what if I had colored randomly, like over the lines? Would they have told me that that's a mistake? That's wrong. You should not do that. It's a bad thing. Or would they have told me that's wonderful because you were curious, right? You experimented, you tried something new, and maybe when I did something different, I actually made very creative, very beautiful drawing that nobody else was able to do because nobody else was kind of courageous enough to try something different. Maybe, or maybe it was very bad. It didn't look good. But I understand now why they told me to color between the lines, right? So when somebody does things differently than kind of instructed, do we see it as that's a mistake, that's bad, don't do it again? Or do we kind of value the curiosity, the experimentation, like you wanted to find out, and that's a great skill for the future, keep that. So what's our kind of response? Because I think learning comes from the reflection after the experiment. I will say that again. Learning comes in the reflection after the experiment. So after we've tried something, and then when we think, well, what did I just do? What happened? Right? That's the moment when we internalize things. That's the moment when we actually learn, not when we hear about it, not when we just remember it by heart, but after we have kind of tried something and then we reflect back. In kindergarten, for example, we were told in Finland, the winters are, cold, and in the winter we were told not to put our tongues in the winter to frozen or the metal poles outside, right? Because it gets stuck, right? Maybe you have the same thing as well. But of course, some children did that. I mean, some were curious to know what happens when you put your tongue to a frozen pole in the winter when it's -20 outside. And of course, it hurt. It was not very nice. But the thing is, when did we learn? It was the reflection after the experimentation. So when it was hurtful and it got stuck, that's when we decided not to do it ever again, right? So that's the moment when we learned. So we need to encourage people and children, students, to be curious and not kind of feel like, why didn't you just do it as I told you? Like, why do you have to be, no, I think it's good that somebody wants to experiment. The challenge is sometimes, I think, when we go to school, we are always told what happens next. And of course, with children, it has to be that way. But all the materials, everything, we have designed the lessons, the curriculums, everything. The children just have to show up, and then we tell them what happens next. And when they go through the whole school path for like a decade, and they always are told what happens next, like take these pages, do these exercises, this is the exam, and this is what you should do. They don't develop the skill of, I'm going to find out on my own. Like, I'm going to try, I'm going to do something. And when they get out of the school path, like when they get and are independent for the first time, all of a sudden they are completely lost because they don't know what they want. They don't know what to do because there's nobody telling them anymore what happens next. They should be somehow able to do it on their own. And when they haven't developed that skill, it's difficult to get ahead. And maybe they take 1 year of leap. They don't, after school, they try to figure out what they want to do in life, what's interesting to them, and maybe 2 years, 3 years. So we need to kind of facilitate situations where they get to they don't get instructions, or they get to kind of be independent, like I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Like, that attitude is super, super important. Okay, let's move on. Next, perseverance and patience. Now, the environment we live in right now doesn't really kind of encourage us to commit and be very perseverant, because our attention span has gotten shorter, right? The instant gratification, or the need for it, drives our behavior, right? And wherever we look, there's advertisement, there's people trying to get our attention, and that's not the best environment to be in, especially when we know that if you want to achieve anything great in your life, you have to be persistent. Things don't happen overnight. Like, it really requires persistent work. And when we have this kind of environment where we are being sold, these kind of prizes, learn this in 3 weeks, get this in 2 weeks, and everything is like quick and fast and efficient, and we need to remind ourselves that certain things just take time. We can't rush them. We cannot kind of make it more efficient. Childhood, for example, it needs this time. So it's kind of like a force against the culture we currently have, where we have so many options, and the second we are not kind of satisfied, we take something else, or we change the course or something. We need to be able to stick to the plan and really understand that in high school, for example, let's say 3 years of persistent work can give you prosperity for 30 years. If you have that mindset, like if you understand that the 3 years, like that's not too long of a time, but if I can 3 years, I can really push myself, the rest of my life, I will thank myself for that. So that's the attitude we need. And also, I need to say, many times when we talk about future skills, we kind of throw these things to schools. We say that at schools, they should teach this and that, and and many times the things are very kind of idealistic, or I don't know, very, very kind of, they're incredibly important things, but quite difficult. Like, people say children should be able to cope with uncertainty, or children should be able to learn from mistakes, or get over disappointments, and wonderful things, yes. But my question would be, how many teachers are excellent at coping with uncertainty, or getting over mistakes, or how many parents can say, I can show my children how to be persistent and perseverant, and I can tell them how to kind of we cannot say that children should be doing that if we are not able to give them an example. of course they should see from us that commitment pays off. They should see from us that it's good to kind of do one thing at a time, not multitask all the time. So it starts with ourselves before we can kind of ask anything from the children. We show the example. Technology and the future. Now, I wish we had a bit more kind of common relationship to technology. I mean, it's a pity that basically nobody has ever, built a web, for example, on some kind of like a small internet, I mean, in a classroom. Like very few children or even adults have ever touched a microchip or seen a transistor or knows what transistors are, or, ever coded or designed a robot. The thing is, we should really give children, and all of them, but especially children, opportunities to interact with technology so that they see it's not magic, it's not something distant and incredible, but it's tools, it's play, it's fun, it's colors, it's all of these things. So we should facilitate a situation where they get to kind of get close to what these technologies are, so that they kind of create a relationship that is neutral. It's not something to be afraid of, it's not something that makes everything difficult or something like that. It's what we make out of it, right? Now, the challenge is that when technology develops very fast, and let's say something gets broken, my phone or my laptop gets broken, what do? Well, I buy a new one, or I ship it to somebody to fix it, and then I get it back. And that means we don't really understand what went broken or what happened in the box, like what even is there, right? The thing is, if my bike gets broken, right, I put the chain back. I know how to fix the bike, so I don't create this kind of weird relationship to bikes, thinking that I'm not a bike person, or bikes are not my thing, or I don't have a clue about bikes. No, the things that I understand, that's normal. So when we don't kind of see the technology up close, it becomes this magical thing. Nobody can tell, like, how does the internet work? If I send a message, how does it get to the other person's phone? And like, it's all just something we don't understand. And the thing is, we kind of give the responsibility, we give the power to those people who understand it. And it's quite a small fraction of people who at the moment have a lot of power or, say in what our world looks like, what is the technology we develop, and so on. The challenge is that, it's a pity that, we have a very homogeneous, group of people developing technology. So, who is this stereotypical coder or engineer or, person who develops technology? Young man, right? We have a lot of young men. They are overrepresented, developing technology, and that's a pity that we don't have diversity, because the people who develop technology, they create technology that makes sense to them, right? They develop, the needs that young men have get to kind of be represented in the technology they build. So let's say I give a smartphone to a young man. Of course, they understand how it works and they know everything about it. But if you give the phone to a 80-year-old, older person, and they don't understand the phone, they don't get it, it's difficult, and they might be tempted to say, technology is bad, technology doesn't work, technology is the problem here, because they don't understand it, right? But it's not technology's fault, but rather we didn't have any 80-year-olds, helping the developing team, make the product, make the smartphone. So if we had more diversity, if we had those older people as well in the team, they would have been able to take into consideration different people's needs much, much better. So we need to have all different types of people to develop technology so that it actually helps and serves everybody. So we need you. If you think like tech is not my thing, we especially need you, to help, this very limited group of people to understand different perspectives. If I told you that for the last 30 years, only young women had developed technology, imagine what our world would look like. Our phones, our social media, our laptops, everything would look quite different because of what young women decide to do or what they want to do. Or if I told you only people over 60 would develop technology, our world would be, again, very different. Or if I told you literacy is dominated by young men, right? The idea of what literacy is and could be would be very limited. So we need to understand that technology is a broader thing. Right now, what we see is a product of certain people's thinking. But we need more diversity in order to actually develop better educational tools, for example, or whatever we are doing. Just a couple of words about the future. It would be good that we talked more about predictions and, where is the world heading? Where are we going to? Because it's good to keep that in the back of your mind. For example, World Health Organization said in their report that the most common reason for sickness in 2030 is mental health. And that's a thrilling, of prediction. They said in the same report that most or more than half of this will probably occur with children less than 14. And if they are right in this prediction, this is our biggest challenge. I mean, how do we take this into consideration? How do we prevent this from happening? It's just to kind of remember that this is what World Health Organization is predicting, and they don't throw these numbers out of their sleeves. They have good kind of reasons to believe this will happen. So one prediction to kind of keep in mind, right? Another kind of example could be Starlink. So SpaceX has been sending satellites into the space, and there's this network of satellites around the globe, and satellites provide internet connection. And when they get the whole thing live, meaning all the people who don't have access to internet yet will become or get online, we will have a lot of new internet users, right? How many people are not connected online yet, roughly? Well, it's some little less than half of the population on Earth. So 3-4 billion people. So imagine this, 5 to 10 years ahead, when SpaceX and Starlink, they get it live, we are about to get like 4 billion people online who will make their first transaction ever in like 5 years, or 10 years. Global trade will look quite different in that point, right? 4 billion people are about to make their first profile ever, or first photo they're about to upload. So this is going to explode. I mean, all the good things. Imagine the speed of innovation, like new ideas, new science research. We have 4 billion brains connected, but also all the problems we have. So fake news, trolls, misinformation. It's only the beginning, what we see right now, because the rest of the population is about to join us. So these are things that we should discuss more, maybe at schools as well. Maybe then children and we all wouldn't be so afraid of the future when we thought that we have a say, we can impact the future, we talk about it, we discuss, is this the thing we want? So I think it's a skill to kind of be interested in the future. It's a skill to look forward. Compassion and honesty. Now, it's going to be quite a strong currency, I would say, in the future. In the age of social media, we're all kind of learned to create a certain image of ourselves, or at least show certain aspects of our lives. We kind of manage the brand we create on social media, and we pick the most beautiful things that we share. And I think people, like we as the audience, we have kind of learned that it's not honest, it's not real. I mean, it's something curated. And I think now we want to see something different. We want to see something that we can trust, something authentic, you know. And rather than having everything like planned and scripted and ready-made, we want to have something like, we want honest people, not kind of influencer, fancy lifestyle, perfect way of living, but something real, right? So I think it will increase in value. I was once contacted by a telemarketer. So he called me and he tried to sell me something, and he started with small talk. So he asked me, you know, how is your day going? You know, do you have any plans for the weekend? What's the weather like over there in Helsinki? And I answered his questions, and you know, it's fine, okay. But I realized at the same time that he's a telemarketer, so he's not interested in, he doesn't really care how I'm doing. He's doing it because maybe he was given instructions to kind of read those certain lines because it breaks the ice, and then he wants to sell me something. So I realized that this is theater. There's nothing real in this interaction. We're playing a game. And when that happened, I kind of distanced myself. You know, I got irritated because it was waste of time, you know, in a way. So he wasn't able to sell me anything when I'm irritated. So the whole thing kind of collapsed. And I was wondering, what if he didn't try so much? What if he was kind of transparent or about his goals? Maybe he could have said, you know, my job is to sell you something. This will take 3 minutes. Can I sell you, right? I would have appreciated that. Now you're not trying to kind of get under my skin and try to get me to do something that I don't want, but you appreciate that I can make my decisions. Sure. So I would have said, go on, I will listen and I will buy if I need something. So I would have been open to the conversation, right? And I think now that we have the first Google generation, the first multimedia generation, you know, they are very good at sensing, like a kilometer away, whether something is real or not. Like they can smell it, you know. Is that adult just saying the right things, like saying the right words, but they don't really care, or it's not really, he or she is not present, or, you know, maybe there's somebody just like teacher coming on top and like telling me what to do, what to think, and they can really sense if somebody is honest in they're authentic or not. So I think in these days, rather than trying too much, you know, we have all these kind of guidance that do this and you will win the negotiation, like do this, you will get a raise at work. And I think rather than trying to play tricks or be more clever, we could be just kind of honest. And then when somebody else is doing that, we could be compassionate towards that. So I think this is something we desperately want and need, and it will become more and more important to kind of cultivate that side in ourselves as well. Moral courage and ethics. It's a very, very important discussion to have. You know, what is, or how do these technologies affect us? You know, how does persuasive technology change our behavior and our attitudes, our thinking, and what do we think about that? There are a lot of new dilemmas, a lot of new problems we should somehow solve, but they are very difficult, you know. What do you think about gene editing? Is it okay or not? Should we allow it or not? Or in what extent? We can't go to history to look, how did we solve similar situation in the past? Because we haven't had those situations yet. So we're kind of deciding what is natural, what is not. We're playing with biology. You know, with technology, we can do incredible things, and we have a lot of power, but we don't have a lot of wisdom always. You know, how can we make sure that we don't use these powerful technologies in the wrong way? So we need to discuss what problems do we want to have, and what problems should we try to, you know, abandon? Because usually we just exchange old problems to new problems, right? So we need to talk about, is the new problem better than the old? You know, back in the day when we had paper bags with which we took our stuff from the market back home, there were activists who said that, you know, we should not use paper for bags because forests are cut down and we lose all the woods, and you know, so no for paper, right? And with the pressure, we were able to move forward and we invented the plastic bag, right? And people were happy, like wonderful. Now the forests are safe and we have these plastic bags. But time passed, and again we started to learn, wait a minute, there are some problems with the plastic because it's in the ocean, right? It doesn't recycle. You have to use oil for that, like many problems. And again, we have this pressure, people saying you should not use the plastic bag and then throw it away. You should have a fabric bag, like a cloth bag, right? And now we have this, at least in Finland, I think the trend, everybody's having these like fabric bags. And we have, again, we're about to learn, or we have started to learn, that we have to use those fabric bags like hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times, before they're equally good to the previous solutions, because it takes a lot of resources to make the fabric, right? So some people are moving back to paper bags because now we see that as the ecological option again. That's the good one, right? So we humans, we always want change. We want to have different things, we want change, but we don't always see far enough, like what are the new problems that we might be blind to right now? Like, are we able to say, is this actually sustainable, or is it just, does it sound nice, but it's not, like maybe there's something that will become actually even worse in the future. So this is why we need to talk about ethics and about the moral courage. When laws still, they come always late. There is this time when we can do things and we haven't regulated them yet, and we need to somehow kind of make our minds, what do we think about this, so that it wouldn't be like some guys in a cabinet deciding for the world, like what is normal, what is not. So quite big questions. Then critical thinking and interpretation and media literacy as well. This is fundamentally important, right, for democracy, for democracy, for, you know, future of, you know, media, everything. And it is much more than understanding what is kind of what is facts, what is fiction, what is an anecdote, what is statistics, you know. It's more about understanding, why do I see what I see when I go on social media, for example? Why do I think the way I think? You know, if you've ever been to Las Vegas, or if you've ever entered a casino, you know that the environment of a casino, it's incredible. Like the sounds, the lights, the colors, the impulses, like you almost get a headache. There's such a stimulation when you go into a casino. And when I was in a casino for the first time in Las Vegas, I wanted to see what it is. I was kind of puzzled because when I entered the casino, and actually you can imagine this with me, when you enter a casino, what do you hear? So what sounds are there in a casino? Well, there's clinks and clangs and, you know, jackpot and the coins going against the metal, like all these kind of winning sounds and like very nice happy things, right? Where do those sounds come from? Well, they come from the winning machines, of course, winning slot machines. What about the losing machines? What sounds come from the losing machines? The answer is nothing. They are silent. The losing machines don't give any sound. And when I was in the kind of hallway or entryway of the casino, and I was looking around, I realized that this is very, very weird or misleading, because I know deep inside that most people lose all their money in casinos. That's how it works. But everything that I can see around me tells me about getting rich, getting successful, you know, making it. Isn't this weird that we have this loud minority and a silent majority, right? I don't understand, I don't realize that most of them are silent, because all my focus, all my attention goes to the loud minority, because they are so kind of, that's all I can sense. So when I went back to Silicon Valley, I realized this is like a casino. We have loud minority. We have the unicorns, you know, the incredibly successful startups and entrepreneurs, and this is what we hear from. This is what we like show in the news. But the loud kind of, the silent majority, the most of the people, they don't make it. Nothing happens. They lose their money. The startup doesn't become anything, right? And I was thinking, well, Silicon Valley is like a graveyard for startups. That's closer to reality. But my understanding, my image is distorted, because all I can see from media is, of course, the incredible success stories. When I open a news page, right, what are the stories that we show in the media? Well, the extraordinary things, the incredible things, and the worst of all, right? But the silent majority, like the average, normal, bit boring, but very common, that doesn't show up. We don't see the presence of that. We don't sense that most of people, most of things are actually there, but we don't just show that, right? The same way, when I open social media, let's say I go to Instagram. I open Instagram, and you know, I could ask, what are the sounds I hear in this casino? What do I see in Instagram? Well, the winning machine. So vacation photos and beautiful poses and you know, beautiful meals and all these like certain collected parts of our the best moments of our lives. And the thing is, if this becomes kind of normal, if I don't pay attention to that dynamic, I start to expect or think that this is what happens all the time to everybody. It is normal, while it is not. You know, when I will go to a casino and I see everybody's winning, I might start to expect that I'm going to win as well, right? I should win because I see so much of it happening around me. And if I don't win in the casino, I get disappointed. I get angry. I think that the system was against me, or this was rigged, or this should not have happened to me. It was wrong, or something like that. Well, it was not wrong. It was exactly at what we were expecting, but I had unrealistic expectations. I was kind of comparing myself to a margin. So when I see on Instagram all these wonderful things, and somebody thinks, all of those people are living such happy lives, and look at those vacation photos, and oh, what beautiful things, and there's nothing in my life, there's nothing special, I wish I had that. And you know, we kind of lose the average. We forget that the silent majority, you know, their everyday lives is not that. Like, don't compare yourself to the margin. So this is what I mean by critical thinking, you know, interpretation, media literacy. So do we understand like how this dynamic works? And when we think about our attitudes, our own thinking, like why do I think certain way? We could ask, has the loud minority affected my opinion? And is it possible that the silent majority, I'm not aware of those because I don't see them in media, or I haven't come across them. So this is the skill that I really kind of, you know, think is important in the future. Now, the last 4 skills, I will go a bit, you know, quicker through them because I see that I have almost got over time. So let's go for the last 4 a bit faster. Creativity and improvisation. For me, creativity is the ability to make decisions. So if I told somebody or asked somebody to make a chair, somebody could say, I'm not a designer, I'm not creative, I don't have ideas, how could I make a chair? But if it's only about making decisions, then it's quite easy. I mean, a chair, what are the options? A chair can be blue, yellow, green, red, right? That's not difficult. A chair can be made out of wood, steel, concrete, plastic, not difficult. It can have 4 legs, 3 legs, 1 leg, right? All you have is options, and you just have to combine different features of the chair, and then you get something creative, right? So creative people are good at kind of, from thousands of options, finding the good ones, right? And that's how you make a good poem or symphony or article or essay or whatever it is. You know, it's decisions. And we will always need this skill in the future. How can we make kind of decisions in a situation that we don't have experience of? How do we improvise? How are we creative among or in the midst of big problems, for example? How do we make good decisions? Problem solving and adaptability. You know, for me, problem solving is the ability to combine different perspectives. So if I have a problem, let's say here I have a problem which is climate change, and I ask people, how do we solve climate change? I get very different answers depending on who I ask. If I ask from politicians, they come from here, right? This is how you solve climate change, you know, regulation, laws. If I ask entrepreneurs, how do we solve climate change here? They come from a different angle. They come from here, right? They say new products, new services. You know, companies are faster than any government to react and make a decision. We can make a decision in one day, right? If I ask from a futurist, they come from here, you know, they say new technology will solve all our problems. If I ask teachers, they say everything starts with education, right? So that's the way we can move forward. If I ask artists, they say we need to create motivation. So we need to make people feel when they want to make a behavior change, then they do that, right? So all these people gave me very different answers to like, how do we solve the problem? And they're all correct, but again, not, because the problems are very complex. We need many different professionals to explain why they think or what they think is the problem. And only when we can understand the problem, we can solve it. So problem solving for me is kind of cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary thinking. We all should study a little bit of coding, a little bit of law, a little bit of gardening, a little bit of this and that, because we would learn different tools. How do we approach problem? How does a coder see this problem? How does a lawyer see this problem? How does an entrepreneur see this problem? And so on. Entrepreneurship and teamwork. If we have 3 to 4 billion new people online, as I told you earlier, we have all those people, like 4 billion new competitors as well, who might do the same job, but a bit faster, a bit cheaper, right? And remotely. So in this environment, you know, we know that gig economy is getting more popular, or, you know, the kind of micro entrepreneurship is on the rise. We are going to have process work. We're going to have kind of a fragmented work. So in this environment, entrepreneurial mind or activity will become more common. I'm not saying that we will all be entrepreneurs or start companies, but rather we will have more responsibility of our own job. You know, we have to find customers. We have to create a path. We have to sell our knowledge. We need to be more active on our own. We cannot go to a job and then kind of expect to spend the next 30 years there. We have to have more this kind of more adaptability, as I had earlier, but also like the entrepreneurship. We need to be more kind of on top of the game in this sense. And for some people, it's a good news. Some people not. But I think we need to cultivate we need to get ready for this type of work, which might be quite different from what we've had previously. And last, but maybe the most important, so not the least, well-being and self-knowledge or inner listening. You know, this is again something that it seems like we have kind of gotten worse in, or maybe the environment is so demanding that you know, we get tired, we get, you know, burnouts, and we need to learn that it's a skill to cultivate our well-being. Like, we need to know what to do when we need rest. Like, your body is giving you some signals that you might want to slow down a bit, right? But how do you react to those signals? How do you, like, when you need to rest, what do you do? Because if you are just laying on the sofa scrolling social media, that's not rest. Like, how do we actually charge our batteries? How do we listen to our bodies, and all the meta skills and mindfulness, all these things I maybe go into this bucket. But you know, it all starts with this. If our mind is not healthy, if our body is not healthy, we don't have any foundation. So this is where it all starts in a way. But at this point, I want to throw the ball to you. This is my curriculum. This is what I believe in. These are the skills that I think will help us in the future. And if you are interested, I mean, I can show you the book that I mentioned. You can read more about it. But at this point, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me, your attention. And maybe if you have something on your mind now, you can ask me. So thank you, vielen Dank again. I've actually studied German for almost 10 years at school, but I'm a bit rusty. So if you can ask in English, that would be better. But I can try also in German, but not that good. Thank you very much.
Herr Tupölönen, thank you very much. The Casino of Life. I heard many new things today. Thank you very much. So the time's nearly up, but I have 2 questions for you, okay? The first questions, these are all things where our school system, school curriculum doesn't focus on right now. Where can we start to bring in these 12 future skills? How long does it take to switch the education system?
Yes, a good question and a big question as well. When we talk about a systemic change or introducing something new to the education system, I think it's difficult if we have a lot to lose. Because if we have a good thing in place, or at least historically, it's been beneficial or it's been successful, all the new things that somebody, introduces or, suggests, they might look like threats. Oh, we don't want to take a risk. We don't want to do anything different because we don't know how, if it's worth it. So when we have a lot to lose, we don't want to take risks. We don't want to kind of change things. But I've worked in Myanmar. I started an edtech company in Myanmar, and one thing that I learned from there is that when they don't have a good education system in place, in fact, it's one of the worst in the world, and they know it. They've said many times to me that it's bad, right? It's a developing nation. They said that they are very open to try all the new things because there's nothing to lose. All the new ideas might be updates, and it might help us. And in those environments, they might be able to find something valuable and build on it. And for us in Europe, in Austria, in Finland, I think the opposite is kind of true. We have a good history, or at least relatively speaking, and because of that, we are very careful. And the problem is that we might become a museum of gained benefits. We slow the development. We stop the clock. So education is very subtle. Nobody wants to be like the first to test or try something new with. It's a slow thing to change, and we don't want to be too risky. We don't want to change everything just because of it. But I would say we could be a bit more courageous in trying new experiments. And if something seems to work, then we can, introduce it and build on it. But if we try to just kind of make sure that, the good kind of thing that we had in the past, like nothing changed, then I think it's the beginning of a decline. And future will challenge us all. So I hope we don't make that mistake.
Okay, thank you. And the second question, in Austria, we have a shortage of high-skilled workers and labor shortage at all. Where can we get high-skilled workers today and in the future? Is it possible?
Yes. Very good question. The transition we have in the work is, of course, now demanding more and more high-skilled work from us. When we went from agricultural revolution to industrial revolution, it was quite straightforward to get people from fields and farmhouses to factories, right? That didn't require too much. But now from information revolution, right, we need a long educational degree and a lot in order to kind of, and it takes a lot of time. So the transition is not that easy. The good news is that when people get more access to education, and especially online, where we get degrees online, we get more and more high-skilled workers from all around the world. There are a lot of very, very interesting, education companies and degree-giving institutions online, and I think quite many people are happy to choose those paths to get forward. And even in the workforce, we are maybe realizing that we don't require the certain type of certificate, but we understand the potential somebody has, or if they've kind of used other ways to educate themselves. We are getting more open to different kind of CVs, different backgrounds. So that might be one good thing, I believe, for the future. But we need to remember that when I said that 4 billion people are about to get online in like next decade, a lot of high-skilled workers we will get from developing nations as well. And in 2050, a third of the whole population on Earth lives in Africa. So that might be something to keep in mind. Also, one more thing, in Europe, how many people are in EU in total? We have 400 plus million, right? How many people in Africa less than 25? Less than 25, over 800 million. So twice as many people under 25 than the whole EU has. And in the whole world, every other person is under 30. So in 5 to 10 to 15 years, they are overrepresented at workforce. So if we don't see those people around us, we are in a bubble. We don't remember that every other person in the world is under 30. So in Finland, in Austria, I think it's the same thing. We need to remind ourselves, if we want to be building the future, that is the segment, who we will have as voters, as customers, as workers, as you name it. So we want to kind of keep them in mind and involve them also in the decision making. But that's maybe a good way to kind of end the answer. More than half of the population less than 30, that's where we have the potential.
Okay. Perttu Pölönen, thank you very much for these perspectives. Thank you very much for being here today. Die Abschlussworte gebühren Angelika Sellefoschauer, bitte.
Yeah, thank you so much, dear Perttu Pölönen. For me, it was very interesting, your very first point with the reflection on the experiments, where you said we need this phase to dive in, these reflection ceremonies. And you gave us also to bring in the children and the companies in some sort of match. And I think that is one point where we can focus our activities right now. And that's very important to bring the children and the teachers in the companies together on the different branches, and not only once a year, many times. And that can we put in our agenda very fast. And yeah, we're very happy to have you here and to give you us your insights. And yeah, the book is very interesting, and I will buy some in the next minute. We wish you all the best and so many success for your future. Und liebes Publikum, danke, dass ihr hier bei uns wart. Wir haben den nächsten Termin des Digi Think Tanks am 20. Juni 2023. Sie bekommen wieder zeitgerecht eine Einladung dazu, und wir freuen uns, wenn wir wieder österreichweit gemeinsam zu diesen Themen im Rahmen der Volkswirtschaftlichen Gesellschaft Österreich, der Oberösterreichischen und der Spartenindustrie mit Ihnen diskutieren dürfen. Dankeschön und alles Gute.
Dankeschön, einen schönen Nachmittag aus Linz.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Perfekt.
Super.